Hi guys, Josh here, aka Beards and Books. Today I'm going to talk to you about a Stephen King reading challenge that I'm looking to start in August. Hope you enjoy. So guys, hopefully you'll have seen my Road So Far original tag video that I put out not too long ago. If not, I will put a link around somewhere. In that video, one of the things that I spoke about was wanting to do a Stephen King reading challenge month. So I've been trying to read more Stephen King as I've got more and more into my reading and my books. I've always found his writing style really interesting, slightly slow at times, granted, but he's come up with so many interesting horror ideas that I really wanted to focus on him. I want to do a month where I read nothing but Stephen King. Obviously, this is going to be quite a dark month. Let's face it, Stephen King books are not known for their love and for their, happy endings. They tend to be quite dark stories. But what I want to do is talk to you today, and Stephen King fans especially, about what books you'd recommend. So I'm going to show you the Stephen King books that I've got that I'm thinking about reading. I'm going to talk to you about some of the Stephen King books that I've already read in preparation for this. And finally, I want to get your suggestions down in the comments on what you think I should pick up, preferably the shorter Stephen King books. I've got some of his longer novels that I definitely want to read, so ideally I could do with some 200, 300, 400 page runs I can get through in a couple of days. So as I mentioned, I've been picking up Stephen King books as I've gone along. I've read a few. I've slightly ruined it for myself with some series because I've started them halfway through. I've also done a couple of his classics, and I've also tried to get into the Dark Tower series. The most recent Stephen King books that I've picked up and I've read are these three. So we've got The Dark Tower, The Gunslinger, End of Watch, which is part of the Mr. Mercedes series, and Cujo. Just going to throw it out there, I really didn't enjoy The Gunslinger, which is part of the Dark Tower series. Now, I didn't realise the Dark Tower series was such a big series, and I know that The Gunslinger is most likely not the best place to start. So any Dark Tower fans out there, let me know which book you'd recommend I pick up instead. I'm happy to try the series, but I really didn't enjoy this one. Found the pacing slow, the characters were in all honesty quite boring, and just nothing happened. Next up, rookie move, I read End of Watch by Stephen King, which is part of the Mr. Mercedes series. This is one I picked up in my local supermarket, didn't really do any history into it. I realised quite early on that this wasn't the first book in the series. I powered through it anyway, and in all honesty I actually really enjoyed this one, so I definitely want to pick up the rest of the Mr. Mercedes series. I'm not sure if I've completely ruined it for myself by starting halfway through. I know The Outsider by Stephen King also follows on from this, so I'm going to have to read the rest of the series before going on to The Outsider. But King fans, would you recommend? Finally, in terms of Stephen King books I've recently read, Cujo. I put a part in my June wrap-up video regarding Cujo. I really enjoyed it. I gave it a high score. Again, I'll leave a link to it somewhere if you want to hear me speak about it more. Really enjoyed it. I think where I'm going to find love with Stephen King is going to be his main series stories. So Cujo, Green Mile, Shawshank Redemption, It. Stories along those veins I think I will really enjoy. But what I want to hear from you guys down in the comments is the lesser known and the slightly smaller series that I haven't picked up yet that I should. In terms of what I want to read during August, which is when I'm planning to do my Stephen King challenge month, I picked up a few books I'm going to share with you now. Again, let me know your thoughts on these. I don't want to waste time on some of his books that maybe aren't as good as others. Stephen King has churned out a lot of books, so I'm sure at least some of them aren't all that great, so let me know down in the comments. First book I picked up that I want to share with you is Dr. Sleep. I'm definitely not going to read this one. I haven't read The Shining yet, which is one I do plan on reading, and I know this follows on from The Shining, so I don't want to spoil the story. I have seen the film, but it's not the same as reading the book, and I know Stephen King hated the film, so I'm going to completely ignore that. So Dr. Sleep is not one that I will read. Second up is The Stand. Now, The Stand is one I am debating reading, but what I want to do is I want to structure my reading month. So I want 2 or 3 smaller Stephen King books, let's say around the 300 page mark, probably 2 of what I would class as medium, but are usually classed as big size books of around 500 page, and then 1 big book. So this one, as you'll see, is a monster. This one clears 1,000 pages. I don't know much about the story for The Stand. I know it's a dystopian world where the world's essentially coming to an end. I think it's almost zombie related, but I don't know. Again, I've tried to not look too much into the synopsis of this to try and keep it as much spoiler free. Would you recommend The Stand? There are other books of a similar size that I want to read, so maybe let me know which one you would recommend as my one big book. The other book that I would class as very big and one I've wanted to read for a long time would be It by Stephen King. So this is slightly smaller than The Stand, which will probably make me want to read this one even more, at just over 900 pages. We all know the story to it. The reason I want to read it, Pennywise is such an interesting character. I love the idea of the essentially child-focused storyline. I know it skips between child and adult between chapters, but I think it'd be a really interesting story to read. Would you recommend this one over The Stand, or would you recommend a different big Stephen King book? So moving down in size, I'm going down now into the more like 500 page range, which I class as big books. I'm looking at doing at least one of these, but I'm going to aim for two. First one that I want to talk about is Dreamcatcher by Stephen King. Again, this really isn't one I know a lot about. I've tried to avoid the story, and I know it's just under 600 pages. I know, as usual, in Stephen King terms, it's set in Maine, which seems to be where a lot of his stories are set. But King fans, is Dreamcatcher one you'd recommend I pick up? Or again, are there ones of a similar size that you think I'd recommend more? Now, the last of the Stephen King books I currently own that I haven't already read is The Bazaar of Bad Dreams. This is one I think I will definitely try. This is a collection of short stories, so I think this will be one of the easier ones for me to get through, knowing that each 100 or so pages we're on to a next story. With it being a collection of different stories, there's not a lot I can say without going through the synopsis of each one, which I don't want to do if you're like me and you haven't read it. But King fans, what's your thoughts on The Bazaar of Bad Dreams? So those are all of the King books that I own that I haven't already read. Now, what I need from you guys is ideally a selection of the 300, 400 page smaller books. There are a couple that I've looked at that I want to pick up. Obviously, The Shining's one. I'm not sure of the size of it though. Green Mile would definitely be another. The Body is one that I really like the look of as well. Again, a child-centric story, which I think King seems to be quite a big fan of. But what would you recommend? So guys, I know this is a slightly different video to normal. I haven't actually read any of these books yet, so I can't give you too much of a review. But I'm really interested to hear your feedback on what books you'd recommend I read. So I'm going to look to do this at the start of August, most likely. So any feedback you've got would be much appreciated. I'm going to be on the lookout for King books over the next couple of weeks in preparation for this. So let me know your feedback. Thanks, guys.